Julia Veronin, Mr. and online also is Mr. Dindo Garcia Makiling. We will be joined later by alias Marie, Senator. That's all. May I request all of those who have not yet
Buenos
vote,
dias,
first
damas y
representatives as well.
caballeros. It is great to be back. At we couldn't have arrived at a perfect timing dahil ngayon pala ay
Please raise your right hand.
mag-appear nandyan na nga siya sa Senado, si Pastor Apollo
Resource
Quiboloy.
persons and witnesses.
Actually, pasensya
Please
kayo
swear to tell the truth,
si Bat, I'm nursing a cold. At marinig nyo, paubo-ubo tayo. Ha? Paubo-ubo tayo mamaya dahil medyo
Thank you, Comsec.
medyo hindi ko na-anticipate masyado yung lamig doon sa Kwan kasi supposedly fall pa lang man sa kanila sa
victim survivors.
fall pa lang man sa Greece at saka sa Turkey. Akala ko hindi siya kasing lamig ng Iceland at Norway na kung saan prepared tayo na pumunta tayo with all the winter clothes. Doon sa Greece at saka sa Turkey, nagdala tayo yung ordinary attire lang, ordinary jacket lang, nanlamig tayo talaga. So lalo na yung mga umaakyat ng bundok, talaga sa tutok ng bundok, yung saan yung kuweba ni Saint John, kung saan sumulat siya na nagkaroon siya ng vision about the revelation. Kaya sumulat siya ng Book of Apocalypse at Book of Revelation. Pero grabe, akala ko matutumba ako, mahimatay ako sa lamig. So masyado malamig. So ngayon medyo pero sabi nga sa English, I wouldn't miss this for the world. Wala sana ako balak mag-vlog ngayon. Sabi ko, mag-rest lang ako whole day. Pero ang tagal-tagal na natin pinapaginipan itong panahon na makita natin si Quiboloy sa Senado. Sasagot man siya o hindi. Yung de facto lang makita natin na napipilitan siya na sumagot. Inuusig siya ng mga, andyan yung mga biktima niya. Andyan si Arlene Stone. So doon pa lang this is history in the making. So kaya sabi ni Bat, sige mag-vlog na lang tayo kahit paubo-ubo tayo. Kaya pasensya na lang kayo, pero this is history in the making. I wouldn't want to miss this kahit jet lag pa tayo. We arrived at 10 o'clock last night. So sige, diretso na tayo dito sa Kwan. Para wala pa energy si Bat, no? Okay, si Tol Tolentino. Tingnan natin rin dito kung sino ba yung mga Duterte boys na sasalo kay Quiboloy at saka yung mga Marcos boys na uusigin si Quiboloy.
But we recognize this committee, again, as an officer of the court, recognize the primacy of the judiciary insofar as this, the Regional Trial Court of Pasig, acknowledgement of the court's jurisdiction over the committee before it moved and conducted back to the court by acknowledging the court's jurisdiction and not conducting a hearing without the prior court approval. And number two, and I would varnish a copy of any opposition filed to form part of the records of these proceedings of the counsel of those applied copies of any opposition filed by the group of Pastor Quiboloy and all other accused in the Pasig case, if that would merit the consideration of this committee, Madam Chair.
So ruled, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That would form part of the records of this case, Madam Chair. And again, I reiterate what I've been saying here. Ang atin pong ginagawa ay hindi po para maghusga ng innocence or guilt ng mga akusado sa isang kaso. Subalit, nais po rin nating bigyan diin na versus Nazareno 1950 na binigyan diin ng Korte Suprema ang kapangyarihan ng Senado na mag-imbita at magpatawag ng mga saksi, resource persons para linawin ang paggawa ng batas. At kaya po tayo merong pagdinig ngayon. Subalit, nais ko pong hilingin sa lahat that during these proceedings, we show utmost respect and consideration to all persons here present, whether accuser or accused. Ang Senado po should remain as a bastion of dignity. Hindi po tayo narito para magtapon ng kung ano-anong dumi sa bawat isa, kung hindi para ipakita na ang paggawa ng batas ay ating pinapahalagahan at pinapahalagahan din natin ang karapatan ng mga naririto. Sa hukuman, meron silang, ulitin ko, meron silang karapatan na magsalita ang abogado. Dito po ay hindi. Let me ask the committee and all my colleagues here, whether present physically or virtually, to assure all of those listening that under our rules, all resource persons will be treated with respect and afforded fair treatment. And that this institution, as I've said, will always pride itself in upholding the principles of fairness and transparency. However, if there are legal matters against you, it must be addressed in the proper judicial forum, not here. In summary, while we have the authority to compel testimony in aid of legislation, any allegations or charges will have to be resolved in the court of law. And I'm now referring to the Regional Trial Court of Pasig. Madam Chair, let us always be reminded that we have a constitution. We have a living constitution. And that the constitution...
Andyan na naman si Tol Tolentino, mukhang ang tono nito parang masyadong protective kay Quiboloy. Ilang bang nakatikim ka? Ilang bang chika babes ni Quiboloy na nakatikim ka, Senator Tolentino? Nakita na, sabi na natin, dito malalaman natin yung mga sino pa rin mga Duterte boys ang lalantad. So nandito na isa, nagsasalita na utmost respect daw kay Quiboloy. Bakit si Quiboloy? Nirespeto ba ang Senado? Bakit si Quiboloy binastos ang batas by escaping? O bakit? Respeto ba yun sa Senado? Bakit ngayon nandiyan sa Senado si Quiboloy? Puro respeto ka ba? Pa-constitution ka pa. Pa-Supreme Court ruling ka pa. Ikaw talaga, Tol. Kaya Tol, bumabagsak ka sa survey. Saan ka ba talaga? Marcos ka ba or Duterte ka ba? Nandun ka na kasama sa line-up ni Marcos sa alyansang bagong gata na mga senatorial candidate ni Marcos, pero andyan ka pa rin speaking in favor of Quiboloy. At siguro kung aapir rin si Duterte dyan, magkwan ka rin, magdidepensa ka rin kay Duterte. Kaya Tol, bumabagsak ka Tol. Goodbye na sa'yo Tol. Magkatol ka na lang. Puro respect ka Bakit? Yung hinihipo ni Quiboloy paggabi, yung pinapashower niya, yung pinapapalmolip niya, nirespeto niya ba yun? Wala na Tol, wala ka na. Goodbye ka na, goodbye. Katol ka na lang. You are a katol of history. You are gone. Goodbye na sa'yo. Kahit kwan ka pa, kahit sumali ka pa, binenta mo pa yung kaluluwa mo kay Marcos
Maraming salamat din po, Majority
sa
Leader.
ano pa to, yung
dagdag dun sa
alyansa ng mga bagong gata,
legislation na tinukoy
ng mga
Majority
kandidato.
Leader. Inuulit ko lang
Alyansang
yung
bagong
kahapon
Pilipinas,
statement
pero
ko
puro
kanina
luma yung mga
tungkol sa
kandidato.
ating mga
So bagong
batas,
gata, ang baho-baho.
pag-misuse ng usapin ng religious freedom, yung mga rape laws natin, kung sasaklaw na nito yung mga usapin ng consent, sexual agency at
Ayan,
religious freedom.
magkakwan yan,
At yung mga
maka-showdown
labor
rin yan
laws din natin, kung
kung
saklaw
babarhan
yung mga,
parati ni Tolentino
karapatan at
si
kagalingan ng mga tinatawag
Risa
na
Hontiveros,
religious
magkaka-showdown
foreigners.
yan.
So muling
Tingnan
salamat
natin.
po sa Majority Leader.
Tingnan natin.
And at this point, lastly, bago natin pakinggan yung ating mga victim survivors, may request po sa ating good Foreign Affairs Secretary Manalo dahil kinakailangan nila umalis ng mas maaga.
na makapagbigay
Pero
ng
nag-inom na tayo
ilang
ng
mga
gamot.
salita sa atin. Secretary Manalo, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Maraming salamat, Honorable Chairperson,
Secretary
Senator Lisa Hontiveros, Honorable
Foreign
Senator
Affairs.
Francis Tolentino, my colleagues in government, good morning. I just want to thank Senator Hontiveros and this committee for giving the Department of Foreign Affairs the opportunity to contribute to our meeting today in aid of legislation. Nais ko lang briefing lang on 2 points, with your permission. The first point is on the possible extradition issue. And as you know, the Philippines has an extradition treaty with the United
Sige na,
States. of
extradite nyo na
America.
si Quiboloy.
I wish to report
Laking
that
problema
as of
yan.
this date, the Department of Foreign Affairs has not received a formal extradition request
Wala pang
from the
formal.
United States. Doon po sa isang issue din, I want to focus on the request for assistance by any Filipino nationals in the United States who may have been victims of human trafficking in relation to this case. As of this date, none of our foreign service posts in the United States have reported receiving any requests for assistance. Madam Chair, the DFA is ready to assist in providing any information that we may receive from this date relevant to the to today's legislative inquiry. And I'm also being joined today by Undersecretary Sis Domingo, who can add any input if needed for this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Manalo. Yes, would you, Sec Domingo, like to briefly add anything to these two updates on the formal request for extradition and the request for assistance?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, Senator Tolentino. Yes, as Secretary Manalo has mentioned, that we have not yet received a formal request, but we are standing by. We have also not received any request with regard to trafficking. With assistance with respect to the human trafficking. But all our foreign service posts and all our offices in the Department of Foreign Affairs stand ready. And we have been in informal consultation and communications with our sister agencies in government. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you also, Yusek Domingo. The Majority Leader would like
Just
to
one
interject.
quick follow-up question, address either the Secretary Manalo or Yusek Domingo. I have here in my possession, in front of me, our extradition treaty signed November 13, 1994, which I believe should be read alongside
Kahit sa extradition,
1069.
inaabogado na naman ni Tolentino si Quiboloy. How much is the doggy in the window? Senator Tolentino.
Just in case an extradition request is sent to the DFA, what would happen to the pending cases lodged before the Regional Trial Court of Pasig pursuant to PD 1069? Thank you very much,
Secretary Manalo.
If I could first give a very general answer, and then of course on any specifics that might arise in the event that we receive a formal extradition request. Just to say, if we do receive a formal request, we will, DFA will of course study it and see if it is consistent with the agreed procedure pertaining to extradition. And here is where PD 1069 would also come in. So we would have to study that. And then after, if we are satisfied with the request, we will of course refer it to the Department of Justice for relevant action. So in other words, we will still have to study any extradition request if received. Perhaps later it's quite a detailed approach, or even a general approach, if we do receive such a request. Thank you. One quick follow-up, just to remind the officials of Department of Foreign Affairs as well as councils present here, anything that would transpire and would come out of these proceedings would, under oath, would be recorded. And pursuant to existing extradition rules, any request to have any transcripts coming out of these proceedings would have to be coursed through the DFA. Kayo po ang magpapadala nito mula sa committee ito papunta kung saan man. So you should be aware of that, and the lawyers here present should be aware of that, because this would trigger some concerns involving civil rights or individual rights. So just be aware of that, and I suggest, Madam Chair, that the DFA should stay here till the conclusion of the investigation proceedings. To be
Inuunahan na niya kasi alam niya
but that's what
yung
I'm saying. Thank you, Madam Chair.
diniscuss sa hearing, baka hingi ng mga Amerikano para palakasin yung kaso nila laban kay Quiboloy sa Amerika. Kaya siguro hindi pa sila nag-file ng extradition request dahil hinihintay pa nila itong hearing na ito. Pero dito pa lang, parang binablock na ni Tolentino, sinasabi niya, daan mo na kayo sa amin. Public record yan. Ano ka ba? Tolentino ka. Pera namin nandyan ka. Pera namin nagsasalita ka dyan. Pera namin ganyan suot ba't ng damit mo. Pera namin dyan suot na kwan mo, na tie mo, na kurbata mo. Pera namin yan. Tapos hindi namin pwede kunin yung transcripts na anong na-discuss dyan. Bakit? Sa'yo ba yan? Ikaw ba nagbayad sa milyon-milyon, gumagasta sa bilyon-bilyon sa Senado? Pera namin yan.
Open source po itong video na ito.
Okay.
In fact,
Balik tayo. Nainis na naman si Bat. Kararating lang. High blood ka agad.
So, i-play na po natin ngayon para mapanood natin lahat.
What just happened? Sana okay yung signal natin. Ulan kasi eh.
That is why she was
Ay.
supposed to be disciplined. But she
Every
went out.
bit of what she
This
said,
arena of
listen to her voice. Everything that you have said to Teresita Valdehuesa, who's a former worker here, who also backslid because of some lapses in immorality, will give you a sample of her voice that was recorded. Go.
I'm fine, dear. I remember you, Bayo. And I'm so glad that I'm already out of the kingdom. And it's a miracle that how I exit from there. Because the time, kasi I was so fanatic before. But when, time passed, I realized many things I can also share with you if you like. Ask me if I'm ready to dedicate my life. I said yes, because for me, I was thinking dedicate to God.
Mga biktima ito na
I never
umalis
think
na.
about other stuff. And suddenly, he was on me already, and he was trying to pull my pants already off. And then things started to happen, and I understand that, oh my goodness, it's like I have to switch off my mind. I will not question, I will not ask if it's Father's will in my mind. The time I will just not try not to feel anything like that. And because I was shocked by what's happening in the room.
You have to prove that in court because this is an international ministry and I have an international reputation. You will be sued by the kingdom in all places that you've called. We will not let this pass.
Tapang.
Teresita Valdehuesa will be part of this. So better get your lawyers and defend yourself.
Yan ang
We have
pananakot
lawyers
niya
all
parati.
over the world. Wherever there is a kingdom, we have a general counsel in the name of Attorney Michael Green. In America, we have 18 lawyers who are observing all the happenings in the kingdom. We have financial consultants. We have lawyers who will defend the kingdom wherever it is being attacked.
Yan, tapang. O, ngayon, saan ka na, Quiboloy?
For
Andyan
the
ka.
record po, yung pastoral na binanggit dito, si Ms. Alina, she gave her consent also to the playing of this video in this hearing. So, Ms. Teresita, meron po kayong testimonyang hinanda. Pwede nyo na pong basahin. You have the floor.
Siya pala.
Good morning po, Madam Chair, Honorable Senator Riza Hontiveros, and to Honorable Senator Francisco Tolentino, and to all the members of this august body. I come here today to share the truth that has been silenced for 3 decades because of great fear, and this is also on behalf of the many victims who have suffered in silence just like I have. I believe my testimony reflects their pain, struggles, and resilience. While I understand that this is aimed to aid in legislation, I am also grateful to be given this opportunity to inform those who still believe that Apollo Quiboloy has been innocent of the crimes he is accused of because he has never been. At the age of 17, I became a member of the church led by this man, Apollo Quiboloy, in 1918. I was a freshman student. I was eager and active in the community, even spending a significant portion of my college years living at the parsonage where he resided. In 1988, I made a difficult decision of my life to dedicate this to his ministry, driven by the belief that true fulfillment and salvation lay in serving God fully. This choice meant leaving behind my family, my career, and the person I once was. Despite the resistance of family and friends, I pursued my conviction. I joined a pioneering group that struggled to meet basic needs, but my desire to serve God fueled my persistence. Over time, I gained his trust and became a respected worker within the ministry. As the ministry grew, so did our blessings. We experienced answered prayers and expanding membership, which deepened our commitment to serving God. Apollo C. Quiboloy, whom I revered, was considered as God anointed, and his words held absolute authority. I respected him deeply, viewing him as truly the man of God.
Okay.
From the moment I dedicated my life to the ministry until 1993,
Manood lang kayo,
I
guys, ha. Gawa lang muna
found
ako ng kwan
with
ng
me. I felt forgiven.
tea para sa kwan
My
natin,
love for
boses.
God deepened, and I was proud to serve alongside a man I believed to be holy. But one day while in Manila, I received a long-distance call from him. He informed me that he had received a divine revelation intended for me and instructed me to travel to Cebu, where he would share this important message. He was also scheduled to preach in Cebu that Sunday. Upon arriving in Cebu City, we arranged for him to stay at the Park Place Hotel in 20 Osmeña. That evening, he instructed me to remain in the hotel, while Nilda Linda, the assigned worker, returned to the worker's house. When we were alone, I asked if I could just sleep on the sofa as it was a suite room. Instead, he insisted that I would sleep beside him and even said in Bisaya, compatible gyud taging kay parehas man og color ang atong suot. Translated, we are compatible because our outfits were of the same colors. I was wearing red pajamas with white dots, while he was dressed in a red t-shirt and white white pants coincidentally. His words made me feel uneasy and quite nervous, and I saw a different personality in him. But I was quick to dismiss that unusual feeling. And because I had previously witnessed Ingrid Canada or ICC, Teresita Dandan, TTD, and Relina Salinas slept in his room alternately, it led me to believe that it was just normal and harmless. Moreover, we had been conditioned to suppress any negative thoughts about him. We were warned that any suspicion on him would reflect our own personality, using the words found in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 15, I quote, "To the pure, all things are pure. But to those who are corrupted and do not believe, nothing is pure. In fact, both their minds and consciences are corrupted," unquote. And in those days, Absolute obedience was a must. We needed to have an unquestioned loyalty and reverence toward him. Sleeping beside a man I believed to be chosen by God was for me then a great privilege, an opportunity for a sinner like me. But what followed shattered my sense of faith and trust. Without a word, after turning off the light, he embraced me, undressed me, and violated me with his lustful act, and left me in shock and speechless. He then said, "This is the fulfillment of God's revelation." He explained that God had revealed to him that I was to partake in God's life through him by surrendering my body, soul, and spirit. He also mentioned that other girls would go through him in a similar manner. His words were strange, but I was too shocked to respond. The following day after the Sunday worship service, Apollo C. Quiboloy left for Manila, while I was left to carry on with my duties, including organizing carolers for our annual fundraising. Confusion consumed me. I felt betrayed by my faith, by him, even perhaps by myself. I began questioning whether what had happened was indeed God's will or simply a gross abuse of power. When I returned to Manila, I was once again instructed to sleep in his room. Fear gripped me, but defying the anointing of God was unthinkable. We had been told that such disobedience would invite a curse. The next morning, he asked if I understood God's revelation. I remained silent, unable to process
Grabe.
what had happened. He
Ginagamit ang
then
Diyos
referenced me
para
to
makapang-rape.
Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 to 12, explaining that just
Kain
as
muna tayo
Jesus
guys ha.
humbled himself and
Kuwan
obeyed
lang oh.
God, even to the point of death,
Simple
so
breakfast.
he too
Siomay
must
lang,
obey
siomay.
God's will by partaking in carnal things. He claimed this was necessary for him to understand the human experience and to fully empathize with others. He even told me that he had also been reluctant to accept God's revelation, but as God's chosen one, he had no choice but to act on it. I was more confused with his explanation, but I could not complain. I wanted to go out from the ministry, but I lacked courage. I did not know where to ask help. I had
Grabe.
cut all the bridges behind my life, and I could hardly go back because it would mean starting all over again. My family was poor, and I had no connections. My option was to stay because I was still bothered with what if, what if it was indeed God's will? December of the same year was an escape for me. Caroling is one of our sources of funds, and which had been participated in by every member of the ministry all over the country, became my excuse of staying away from the worker's house in Manila where he stayed. In January 1994, I was in his room with Ingrid Canada, the international coordinator of the church, President Dan, the national administrator for the church in the Philippines, and Felina Salinas, his personal assistant. During that
Miss Teresita, before
Andyan
you
yung mga
continue,
Canada.
yung nabanggit nyo ng dalawang beses, Ingrid Canada,
Andyan yan.
nandito po ba siya sa harapan ninyo?
yes, katabi po siya ng Minister
Andyan.
Quiboloy.
Sila po, yung nagtaas ng kamay. Alright, salamat po. Please proceed, Miss Teresita.
During that meeting, he informed the girls that I would be included in the inner circle. Right there and then, I realized that these women had likely endured similar experiences. Without
Nagalaw
any
rin.
words, we shared a mutual
Nagalaw rin
understanding.
mga Canada sisters.
None of us dared speak about what had happened to us. In February 1994, I was sent to Hong Kong, still carrying all the confusions and emotional turmoil. Despite this, I continued to pretend that everything was fine. When one of our musicians, JC Pangilinan, was
Magaling ito,
scheduled to
magaling.
return the Philippines,
Credible,
I seized
credible.
the opportunity to send a personal letter to ACQ. In that letter, I poured out my feelings, openly expressing my emotional distress. I was honest about how deeply shocked I was to learn of his life beyond the pulpit. The man I had revered as a holy figure was in reality an ordinary mortal, one who had exploited my genuine commitment and dedication to God. My faith wavered, and everything I had once believed was shattered. I prepared myself for a harsh response, expecting a violent reaction from him. To my surprise, there was none. Instead, I was sent back here. Upon my return, I was even more surprised to learn that I had been promoted.
Uy.
I was appointed National Crusade Coordinator, National Logistics Coordinator,
Uy,
and
pera.
Luzon Area Administrator all at once. This was a sudden and significant promotion from every previous role. By God's grace, I excelled in all my assigned tasks. Despite this, fear gripped me every time Apollo Quiboloy would come to Manila. My only relief
Kawawa naman.
was when one of the girls would accompany him, giving me an excuse not to sleep with him. I kept myself busy, visiting satellite churches to distract my confusion and agony. One day, ICC confronted me saying, ACQ sensed my distance. I made my work an excuse. February 15, 1998, ACQ used me again. It was always out of fear that I obeyed, a fear mixed with anxiety that he might knew how I pretended to be extremely grateful
Buti na sila nabuntis.
that he allowed me to be a part of his physical life. Because in all honesty, and God truly knew I was not. All the pent-up emotions suffocated me that on the following day, while preparing for church, I collapsed. ACQ performed mouth-to-mouth resuscitation,
Grabe.
but later I learned, he told others, that it was just a way for me to seduce him, labeling me as Jezebel the Temptress. I believe Apollo Carrion Quiboloy understood that I never wanted the life he was trying to impose on me. My decision to dedicate my life to God's service was driven by a sincere desire for spiritual purification from the sins I had committed before becoming a full-time worker. I had only one goal, to live a holy life and ultimately to attain heaven. As the Bible says in Colossians chapter 3, verse 5, I quote, put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust. But how could I achieve this with the circumstances that I was in? Disobedience and complaints were never an option. Anyone who did so was labeled as carnal, as someone who did not overcome the flesh. Everything was always twisted. One day I said, Sir has noticed that you've been distant. I made up excuses trying to avoid the truth. I had been telling Tracy Dandan that I was extremely exhausted. She presumed that I was just too focused of my responsibilities, especially in the logistics department. I was always pressured to meet my 15 million quota.
15 million quota.
Every December on
Ginagalaw
harvest
na
season.
15 million pa.
If ever the sense that there was really something wrong with my belief, I was instructed to prepare my documents for my USA visa, and I believe realization came later when I already left from his group that it was also to distance me from the workers and members here that I might be able to tell his dark secret. I never wanted to go to America because inside of me were unresolved spiritual issues, confused mind that bothered me always. But my visa was approved. I didn't know that I was to lead and plan for the fundraising to be done in America, and we would employ the same strategy of our money making here in the country. In America, I witnessed the double standard life. What we prohibited in the Philippines, we did them there. We lived in luxury. We toured around. We dined in fine and expensive restaurants. We watched movies. Sky's the limit when they went shopping. I decided to stay in the apartment where the minister and his family lived.
Sky's the limit sa
Despite the
shopping.
insistence of ICC to stay with them, I refused. I made a lot of excuses. Sapagkat, hindi ko po natin na kami nasa Amerika ay masyadong nagpakasasa sa paggasta sa pera na masyadong pinaghirapan ng mga kapatiran at ng mga full-time workers. Bilang namuno po sa crusades, evangelism at logistics departments, saksi po ako kung paano nagsakripisyo ang bawat isa para lang makapagbigay sa iba't ibang pangangailangan sa simbahan. Nakita ko na kahit pambili ng bigas ng membro, kailangan ng sakripisyo pa para lang maibigay sa simbahan kahit gugutumin pa ang mga pamilya. Nasaksipan ko po na kahit last centavo para pamasahe, kailangang ibigay pa rin. Bahala nang maglakad papuntang simbahan ang mga mahihirap na membro. Hindi kinaya ng aking konsensyang double standard life. Maraming workers ang napalo dahil sa panunood na ng sine, pero kaming sa Amerika, halos linggo-linggo nanood ng sine, bawal sa amin ito dati. Naghirap ang maraming workers at members sa pagkaruling at pagsulisit sa bawat tao sa lahat ng dako dito sa ating bansa. May namatay, may na-aksidente, may nakulong, may mga na-rape pa na hindi na na-report. Dahil baka hindi paniwalaan at baka makapag-fasting pa dahil may kasalanan na itinago, kaya napahintulutang nangyari.
Na rape habang nagmamalimos.
Lahat may kota, di ba? Napakasakit po sa damdamin ko dahil ako po ang namuno sa mga fundraisings. After December season, ang mga members kailangang magtinda ng mga kakanin para may bigay sa mga pledges for Alay kay Cristo, building funds, love offerings, television pledges, tithes and others.
Television
And hindi po
pledges,
provide
meron
for
pa.
their own foods. They will just resort to fasting. Meron din pa akong quota, 10 to 15 million pesos to raise in the month of December alone.
10 to 15 million.
I organized the carolers nationwide to meet my quota. We recruited and trafficked our young people from Mindanao and Visayas to carol in the provinces of Luzon and in the national capital region cities. Marami pong estudyante na Nobyembre pa lang kailangan nang mag-absent sa paralan at ang iba hindi na nakabalik sa pag-aaral dahil inuna ang simbahan, inuna ang pagkaroling, inuna ang paghanap ng pera.
No wonder maraming bobo sa miyembro ng KOJC hindi nakapag-aral.
Sa mga buwan ng Pebrero hanggang Oktubre, ang ibang workers na nasa logistics department, kailangan mag-solicit na naman throughout the country using the permits of the different associations. Pag-asa ng Buhay, Children's Way Foundation, Tulong sa May Kapansanan, Handog ng Pagmamahal, Pagdamay sa Dukha, Shivers for Christ. The supposed income na dapat ibigay sa mga beneficiaries sa mga nasabing associations, hindi naman talaga truthfully and honestly na ibigay. Only a little portion of the income was shared to the beneficiaries. Ang ibang workers naman, walang hinto sa pagtinda rin ng mga kakanin na may quota of 500 to 1,000 pesos a day, Monday to Saturday. Ito ang buhay ng mga workers na nasa logistics department. In America, they began to notice my indifference. ICC called my attention, stating there were reports from my assistant in the logistics department in Manila that I had secretly sent money to my family. Then, she informed me that ministers wrote letters to ACQ.
Ano ko? Grabe tong revelation na to.
I was then forced to write a long letter of confession, making it appear that I was a sinner who committed all kinds of sins, including those I had committed before joining the ministry. I complied, believing that through this written confession, I would be totally forgiven from my old sins and burdens and be completely sanctified. In detail, I wrote everything I thought was considered sin I had committed from childhood until the present.
From
I
childhood
also
until
implicated
the present.
ACQ in my sins.
Ah,
I wrote in Hong Kong in 1994, and this time he was furious. Then ICC instructed me to revise my letter. I was told not to implicate ACQ and to state that I was the sole sinner and I was filthy. Upon realizing how angry ACQ was, I revised my letter out of fear and stated that I had sinned because I truly was filthy. In detail, I imagined sins.
Ms. Teresita, yung paulit-ulit yung binabanggit na ICC, sino po yun?
Ingrid Chavez Canada.
Sila pa rin po. All right. Please proceed.
In detail, I imagined sins and I made it appear that I had committed them all. That was how stupid I was to obey and exaggerate my story.
Siya na na-rape.
Just to
Siya pa
appease
nag-apologize
the
kay
anger of
Quiboloy.
our leader, Apollo C. Quiboloy, not knowing it would become my death sentence later. My exaggerated story was then distributed to all his leaders
Grabe.
and ministers, and they believed I was filthy, I was pervert, and I was wicked, painting me as the sole guilty party, while ACQ remained innocent. Little did I know this confession would lead to my condemnation within the ministry.
And Ms. Teresita, pag sinasabi nyo ACQ, sino po yun?
Apollo Carion Quiboloy po, October 15, 1998. I was sent back here to receive a punishment through prayer and fasting in the guise of spiritual discipline. And the fasting they planned for me was beyond my imagination. It took me 7 months to suffer hunger and isolation in the mountain of Tamayo in Kalinan, Davao City. They placed me in a small, dark, elevated room beside a kitchen, separated only by a mat and walls. My bed was rough, made of uneven slabs, with exposed nails pressing into my back as I slept. I woke up this morning in pain, with no beddings, and the cold October nights left me shivering. I requested a blanket.
Quiboloy, parang walang expression, no?
I followed a strict routine, regardless of the weather, enduring hunger and isolation.
Na-rape na. Siya pang masama.
No one allowed near me, as I was labeled filthy and deserving of this punishment. Members were forbidden to speak to me. I was physically very weak and so depressed. I prayed that God would just take my life. Ilang beses po ako nanalangin na sana kunin na ako ng Panginoon. I started to question God and wondered if this was truly a divine process or simply human punishment. I asked myself, is this ACQ's way of retaliating because I rejected the life he imposed on me? It felt like vengeance and disguised as spiritual discipline. My only solace came from reading the Word of God from Genesis to Revelation over and over again. Every day was a struggle of faith. I struggled to believe that the process was still the perfect will of God for me. I struggled to believe that I really was a sinner and that I was recuperating from my spiritual disease with a lack of faith. That was to justify my present pains and to at least lighten my burden of loneliness. On January 8, 1999, I gave ACQ a resignation letter and I requested for a fare so that I can travel back to my home in my province. He did not approve my resignation letter. I pleaded to Ingrid, and like a child, I cried for help. But she remained untouched, telling me that it was a divine process. After that conversation, misery doubled. I had no money, and I was still physically weak, so there was no way for me to go out from the compound of the prayer mountain. Waiting for the restoration was the only alternative at the moment. If not for the comforting words of God, surely I would be totally gone out of my mind.
Maloko na siya.
They continually accused me of sins they alone knew and imagined that would always lead me into fasting. It eventually hardened my heart. because I started to realize that the purpose of doing it was to totally break me down and to even slowly kill me.
Siguro maganda ito noon. Mestiza eh.
I no longer saw the reason to stay. I submitted my resignation as a full-time volunteer worker for the second time. But Apollo Carrion Quiboloy refused it again. A week later, on September 30, 1999, I decided to leave without asking for permission, determined to free myself from his control. It was only when I left out of the group that I finally clearly understood that the man I had believed to be God's chosen and holy was an impostor, oppressor,
Impostor.
and deceiver. He manipulated me using his authority and power as God's anointed. I thank God that he took me out from his bondage, from that ambiguous feeling of fear mingled with so much love and loyalty to my Redeemer, Jesus Christ. But he was not finished with me and did not stop terrorizing me. Alex Camia, his personal bodyguard, a full-time worker, once known to be a champion in gun shooting before he joined the group of ACQ, together with his team, kept coming to my place to harass me, serving a fake warrant of arrest to a minister who stayed in my house. This minister settled in my place after he was gunned down in Davao City but survived.
Grabe.
The team of Alice Camilla was
Binaril.
apprehended, and when investigated, they had several firearms in the car, several plate numbers, and there was also a red plate. The registered owner of the car was Apollo C. Quiboloy. Because of their failure to serve the warrant of arrest, they blamed me for hiding the minister and filed cases against me of obstructing justice and grave misconduct and an act on becoming a public official. After that incident, I heard that Alex Camia was the suspect of the murder of an ex-worker who was shot down inside his home, and this ex-worker did not survive. I was scared to death when I heard this news. My option was to remain silent because killing could have actually happened when Camia and his group came to my place. There was also an ex-worker, Elsa Bolivar, who was a senior citizen, a woman shot dead while she was in her garden in Tagum City. I was so hysterical when pictures of her bullet-ridden body were sent to me because she had just visited me in my place before it happened. Fear consumed me and I remained silent. 3 years ago, nagkausap po kami ni Alex Camia. Humingi po siya ng kapatawaran at nagsabi na siya ay nautusan lang po na kailangan din akong iligpit. Pinaniwala po siya na ako ay may malaking kasalanan at ako ay napakasamang babae. Nang tinanong ko kung ano ang aking kasalanan, sinabihan daw siya na tinukso ko raw si Apollo Carrion Quiboloy.
Baliktad.
Nakiapil pa ako sa mga ministro. Narinig naman po ninyo yung sa video. Nakipagtalik daw ako mismo doon sa workers' house at nagnakaw daw ako ng 3 million pesos. He even said in Bisaya, di ba nagtugot man ang Ginoo pagpatay sa dautan? Doesn't God permit the killing of the wicked? Doon ko lang naintindihan na kailangang i-declare ni Apollo Quiboloy sa lahat ng mga workers at members na ako'y makasalanan at napakasamang babae para magiging makatwiran ang lahat ng parusa na binigay sa akin
Para
at
mapatay
magiging
siya.
makatwiran din kung bakit ako kailangang patayin. Apollo Quiboloy called me Jezebel, the temptress, using his pulpit to broadcast how filthy and evil I was. This became a pattern. Kung may mga workers na may alam sa kaniyang buhay, sa sikretong buhay at aalis sa kanyang kingdom, sila ay akusahan ng napakaraming kasalanan. He would always exaggerate their weaknesses at ipaniwala sa mga workers at members na sila ay umalis dahil may mga marumi, mga napakasamang mga tao. His followers only heard his side of the story, which was always filled with lies and twisted truths. The other side, our side, was never heard and was never allowed to be heard. They only believed whatever he fed them and even defended him and attacked those who defied their leader without investigating the truthfulness of the circumstances. Nakita naman po siguro natin kung paano siniraan ng mga workers at defenders ni Apollo Quiboloy ang mga testigo dito. Mga napakasamang descriptions para lang ipahiya ang mga nagsalita ng kanilang mga karanasan sa loob ng kanilang kingdom. Mga salitang hindi nababagay sa mga tinatawag na mga citizen ng Kingdom of Jesus Christ. Their intention is only to demoralize and warn others of the consequences of defiance. Last August 2021, during one of his television programs, he once again maligned me, broadcasting nationally and internationally that I was a fornicator and an immoral woman, which we have just watched. Madam Chair, I would like to remind Mr. Quiboloy to remember the biblical stories about the lives of King Nebuchadnezzar, King Sennacherib, and King Herod. All of them fell into the hands of the Lord. Nebuchadnezzar, you know that, was separated from his people and lived like a beast and ate grass for 7 years. King Sennacherib died a tragic death, murdered by his own sons. King Herod was struck by the angel of God, died, and his body was eaten by worms. Their sin was that they replaced God with themselves, considering themselves as gods and blaspheming the one true God.
Nilecturean
This
pa
is
si
all, Madam
Quiboloy.
Chair. Thank you.
Salamat po, Ms. Teresita,
Ano
sa
kaya sagot ni
testimonya
Quiboloy
mo.
dyan?
Kahit kailangan mong iyakan para basahin sa amin.
Bigat ng
Bago
dala
yung
niya.
isa munang follow-up question ko sa inyo, gusto kong i-acknowledge yung presensya online ni Senator Cynthia Villar. Salamat,
Yan,
Senator
defender
Cynthia, sa pagdalo nyo.
Quiboloy defender rin yan.
At Minority Leader, Senator Coco Pimentel. Salamat kaayo sa pagdalo. Kung walang opening statement si Senator Coco at si Senator Cynthia, bago yung interjection ni Majority Leader sa Department of Justice, isang mabilis na follow-up question sa ngayon, Ms. Teresita o Ms. Ging, Ate Ging, just for the record, guilty ba kayo dun sa mga krimen na inakusa sa inyo, yung pagnakaw ng 3 million pesos, yung pag-fornicate sa iba pang mga ministro? Guilty ba kayo sa mga iyon?
Of course not.
All right, salamat kayo. Majority Leader, for your interjection with the
Thank you, Madam
DOJ.
Chair. Nothing to do with the previous testimony. Magpapaalam po kasi ako kasi
sige.
magsasalita po ako sa Liga ng mga
Goodbye ka na.
Barangay.
Useless ka naman dyan eh.
Minority
Useless ka lang dyan. Oh, thank you. Buti po ito si Lala Murillo. Mas okay pa ito. Nagpadala ng suporta sa VAT team. And I thank the VAT team. Kung nakita nyo, kahit nasa abroad ako, nagtataka kayo na nakakapag-vlog pa rin tayo about nangyari dito sa bansa. Hindi man parati, pero well-informed pa rin tayo because of the VAT team. So thank you, my VAT team, and thank you doon sa sumusuporta sa VAT team. Kasama na si Lala Murillo. Mucho y mas gracias, Lala. Puro extradition ka. Ikuan mo muna, concentrate mo muna yung nangyayari dito. Puro ka extradition. Parang gusto mo na talaga paalisin si Quiboloy kasi baka naghihirap na dito sa mga kulungan natin na marumi. Oy, by the way thank you sa mga nakilala sa akin sa NAIA at nakasama ko pa sa flight from Doha to the Philippines. Doha, Qatar, si Miss Ligaya from Denmark. Kauwi lang niya at magbabakasyon siya sa Samar ng 3 weeks.
Senior State Council.
Sabi ko maikli naman masyado. Si Miss Ligaya, thank you Miss Ligaya. At habang nasa NAIA ako, nag-retrieve ng luggage, pinuntahan din ako ni Edward Velasco. Nagtatrabaho ito sa Bureau of Customs. Thank you Edward, kababayan ko yan. Puro extradition, matagal pa yan eh. So Edward Velasco, NAIA Bureau of Customs personnel, Edward, thank you. Kababayan ko rin yan.
Has the option to postpone the filing of the extradition case. In which case,
Postponed.
only the filing, Your Honor.
But is the extradition court would be constituted here in the Philippines?
Yes, Your Honor.
Not necessarily the court where the hearing is being
Yes,
conducted.
it would be a separate proceeding, and as I mentioned, it might be postponed.
Takot na takot
or
siya ma-extradite si Quiboloy.
accept the request and file the case in a separate extradition
It
case.
will not be a criminal.
Baka galante si Quiboloy.
No, Your Honor. As you correctly pointed out earlier, the extradition court is not there to determine the guilt or innocence of the subject of the request.
Thank you, attorney. But my second question is related to the first question and to the previous questions. The extradition shall not be granted under Article 4 when the person sought has been tried, convicted, or acquitted. Tama po ba yan? So pag may pending case na rito at mabilis yung proseso, conviction or acquittal, hindi na siya pwedeng i-extradite. Is that correct?
Your Honor, under Article 4, that may be a ground for refusal of the request for extradition, but that in that case, so Your Honor, ano po dun parang in effect parang double jeopardy. But in this instance po, there is no double jeopardy kasi po yung
Saying double jeopardy, one of the grounds for refusal would be when there has been a trial, conviction, or acquittal that's explicitly stated under Article 4 prior prosecution. Double jeopardy will not apply because of the concept of dual sovereignty. Am I correct?
yes, Your Honor.
So, ang tanong ko, mas makakabuti ba na mas mabilis ang trial sa Pasig, which would result in either conviction or acquittal dahil hindi na pwedeng ma-extradite?
Sir, it's independent of the request for extradition. So regardless if the criminal cases are terminated, are expedited, it will not affect the extradition request.
Siguro, aralin niyo mabuti itong Section 1 ng Article 4. Parang very explicit naman ito.
Takot na takot talaga siya ma-extradite. Gusto niya matry dito lang kasi alam niya mababayaran ni Quiboloy yung mga korte dito. Pero sabi naman taga-DFA, either mabilisan or mabagal yung kaso dito, pwede pa rin ma-extradite. Nahihiya lang sa kanya yung taga-DFA, bastusin siya, pero mukhang wala rin kaano alam siya sa extradition batas.
Last week, Your Honor.
Last week.
October 7.
So, ang tanong ko rito, and this will probably be a lingering question, what would be the effect of the dismissal of the U.S. cases against, is Dueñas a miss or a male? Ano ba?
He.
Female? She? Female. What would be the effect of the dismissal of the U.S. cases against Ms. Dueñas with the pending cases of Pastor Quiboloy in the Philippines, since some of the elements would be the same?
Your Honor, if I may defer to Prosecutor
Torre Villas.
Deputy State Prosecutor Torre, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Senator Tolentino. It will not affect the cases pending against Pastor Quiboloy, considering that Ms. Dueñas is not one of the accused in those cases.
one of the accused in cases pending for the Regional Trial Court here in Pasig or in the United States Department of Justice? Saan
Tingnan
po?
nyo, pinag-uusapan nila,
Uh,
hindi lang natin na-discuss ito kasi busy si Bat that time, busy pa tayo na, you know, when we leave for vacation, kailangan ayusin natin yung mga negosyo na iiwanan natin, mga iba-ibang bagay dito sa Pilipinas, pati mga bata, ganon. Okay ba yung mag-meeting sa driver, sa gardener, sa mga maid, ganon. So lahat busy tayo, pero naalala nyo yung pinapalandakan nila, na-dismiss na daw yung kaso, doon yung isang empleyado na nagtestify na laban kay Quiboloy sa Amerika, administrator ata yun. Embes tayo ang binandera natin yung paglaglag niya kay Quiboloy at pagkoopera niya kay pagpasok niya sa plea bargain agreement na mag-testify ako laban kay Quiboloy pero i-drop niyo yung kaso sa akin. So sila dito mas play up nila, mas in-spin nila na drop yung kaso, pero na-drop yung kaso dahil na-cooperate na nga yung si Miss Dueñas. So ito ngayon ang binubuhay ulit ni Tolentino. Kaya sabi ng prosecutor ng DOJ, hindi makakapekto sa kaso ni Quiboloy kasi iba yung kaso ni Quiboloy, iba yung kaso nito. Ito witness lang ito, hindi nga ito kasama sa kaso. So tingnan na talaga ito sa Tolentino. I-share nyo itong vlog para maraming tao hindi naboboto dito. Wala ito nagagawa sa bayan, kundi sarili lang niya eh. Alis ka na! Alis ka na! Sinasaya mo lang oras namin. Kami pa naman nagbayad ng time mo at saka jacket mo maganda.
Respect and dignity should permeate the entire proceedings today. And I hope
Respect and dignity, nakita mo na nga, napaka-kwan nga si Quiboloy nga, kung makita mo yung mukha ni Quiboloy, hindi mo na maipinta eh.
Madam Chair.
Relax lang nga yung witness kanina eh. Alis ka na dyan. Goodbye ka na, wala ka na, goodbye ka na, hindi ka na ma-elect ulit. Hindi ka na ma-elect ulit. Galit na sa'yo yung mga DDS. Trinidor mo si Duterte. Galit rin sa'yo si Marcos. Nasa alyansang bagong gata ka na. Binabanatan mo pa ang kalaban ni Marcos. Hindi ba ito si Quiboloy, sinabi addict si Marcos at nagsisex orgy kasama si First Lady? Oh, bakit dinidefensahan mo yan? Parang sinasabi mo, totoo, nag-orgy si First Lady, pati si Marcos. Ay, ikaw talaga Quiboloy, wala ka talagang kwan.
Bakit po rin po dun sa testimony
Kapal mo talaga.
Inyo kanina? Anong taon nga po kayo sinimulang abusuhin ayon sa inyong testimony at alaala?
It was in October of 1993.
1993 pa.
October of
Nene pa siya noon.
1993. So 31 years ago po.
Yes po.
Alright. Tapos ulitin ko lang po yung nabalitaan kong fasting o dry fast. So hindi kayo pinakain, hindi kayo
Ni-rate
pinainom
niya,
ng
hindi pa
tubig.
pinakain.
Ilang araw nga po ba ginawa ito sa inyo? At wala po bang kasamahan ninyo doon na sinubukang tulungan kayo?
Of course, nobody would ever dare help me because upon instruction na hindi nga ako, and they were not even allowed to talk to me, nor even to come near to me. So actually there were two sets of fasting given to me. One set was, there was 10 days fasting. There was no food, no water. It was Ninit Ukyas who gave me the list of instruction. And number one in the list is to do dry fast for the straight 10 days.
Sino po nagbigay ng instruction?
Ninit Ukyas.
Nenet Okyas.
Yeah.
Okay po.
And then I only was able to eat a little amount of rice and viand on the 39th day because when you had fasted, hindi naman kailangan kakain ka agad. So there was water, then then lugaw, and then finally on the 39th day, that was the time I was able to eat rice. And then after that, there was that second round of fasting, which was even more miserable. It started on February 6, 1999, and there were other workers also. And that was very miserable because it was like this. We were given 5 days or sometimes 7 days. It was a kind of a series of fasting. the first, second, third days were for dry fasting, meaning you were not allowed to drink, of course, to eat food, dry foods, and on the fourth,
Okay guys, siguro dito na lang muna tayo kasi kwan pa tayo. Babalik na lang tayo para ibigay sa inyo yung reaction ni Quiboloy. Ha? Mag-inom pa si Vat ng medisina ulit. So, hanggang dito lang muna tayo. At least nakita na natin yung first testimony and then later on babalik tayo para i-analyze natin yung mga sagot ni Quiboloy. I'm sure hindi siya sasagot ng diretso. Or kaya babanatan niya yung mga witnesses o kaya babanatan niya si Risa Hontiveros. So we will go back for that. And thank you very much for watching. And it's nice to be back. And before we end, we would just like to thank all of those who joined us today, especially si Lala Murillo for supporting the VAT team. Mucho y mas gracias a todos and see you in my next vlog. Sana gagaling na konti si Vat. At thank you sa mga nauna, sila Emily Romero, Erwin Varela, si Marina Hara, si Felisa Lucero. Thank you very much po sa lahat. Ha? See you soon. At si Danilo Unabia, umabol. Thank you, Danilo. And see you.
I did not even think I would survive. Because of course,